Hello there, Chuck Todd here. It is Friday, December 12th. I thought I would jump in with just a quick little update on what was, I think, a pretty monumental day that when we look back on what happened on Thursday, December 11th, in the era of Trump, that this will be could be one of those plot points. And I know we've been down this road before. Could be, is this the sign that it's coming to an end, et cetera, et cetera. But let's talk about two important things that happened, and in two ways where something President Trump demanded, where he tried to bend the will of the law, bend the will of politics, bend the will of individuals his way, and he hasn't been able to do it. Obviously, the big news is what happened in Indiana, with essentially Indiana Republicans feeling comfortable saying no to Donald Trump. But earlier in the day, we had a grand jury who, the famous joke is you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Perhaps the Trump administration should have tried indicting a ham sandwich named Letitia James rather than trying to indict Letitia James a second time on this idea that she committed mortgage fraud. A grand jury said no. And it is, you're starting to see a pattern here where there is more comfort in pushing back. And when you do, you're not seeing the consequences that are threatened. But let's start with the political consequences or lack thereof with what happened in Indiana. This is Republicans saying no. This is not the first time, right? We have seen, right, there has been sort of this, I wrote about it in a Substack about a month ago that I said the cracks in the coalition are starting to appear, focusing then on the Marjorie Taylor Greene situation, Thomas Massie. And it's like slowly but surely you've had people push back and there have been no consequences. Look, in Trump 1.0 and even in that 4-year exile period where he was still sort of hovering over our politics, even if he didn't have actual power, his words mattered, his threats mattered, and he did instill sometimes fear in the minds of some Republicans to go his way. Because at the end of the day, the voters were with him. But that's the issue here. It's like, why did Indiana Republicans feel comfortable pushing back? Why does Marjorie Taylor Greene feel comfortable pushing back? Why does Thomas Massie felt comfortable pushing back? Why do you see a growing, ever so slowly, a growing number of House Republicans and Senate Republicans essentially looking for ways to go in a different direction than what the Trump administration is demanding? And that is because this economy is not good. And voters don't like this economy. And ultimately, if they don't like the economy, everything else starts to bother them. And who knows this better than lawmakers that are closer to the voters than the president is? He has had a hard time making Thomas Massie pay for what he has done and essentially pushing back on him, in particular, on the Epstein files. Marjorie Taylor Greene seemed to indicate that she just didn't want to go through the idea of having to fight Trump in a primary. And so she chose resignation rather than going down that road. So perhaps you could make the argument, if you really wanted to say, well, Trump did intimidate her out of Congress. She's also now serving as an incredible rhetorical weapon against him from the point of view of MAGA. But this is a significant moment because, what is he going to be able to do? It wasn't just one or two Indiana Republicans that stepped up against him. You ended up having a fairly large coalition. You had the former governor, Mitch Daniels, whether he was just giving advice to lawmakers or actively trying to thwart him, because Mitch Daniels is a conservative, is a Republican who does not believe in essentially Trump's vision for the Republican Party, right? It is hard to call Trump a conservative anymore by any definition of conservatism that most of us have grown up with over the last 50 years. He's not for limited government. If anything, he is aggressively trying to be strong government, trying to use the power of government to get business to do its will, use the power of government to get other countries to bend to his will. That is not a limited government philosophy. He is also not the debt is not an animating issue to him. Balanced budgets are not an animated issue to him. Never was for him personally as a businessman, and he has certainly taken that philosophy into government with him. And you have somebody like a Mitch Daniels who thinks, hey, government shouldn't be a part of this. And then there's the whole states' rights issue, which has been arguably among the most important planks to the conservative movement for the last 70 years, right? It was under the umbrella of states' rights that conservatives wanted to fight back on the Civil Rights Act. It was under the umbrella of states' rights that social conservatives pushed back on abortion laws. And here he is essentially trying to thwart states' rights, whether it's the threats that were made by Heritage Action. And by the way, I don't know what's happened to the Heritage. Well, we know what's happened to the Heritage Foundation. They just followed the money. Donors that wanted to support Donald Trump became very important to Heritage. So they've changed their philosophy completely. There were two major think tanks in this town on the conservative side of the aisle, the American Enterprise Institute and Heritage. American Enterprise Institute is still a small c conservative think tank that certainly has plenty of ideas that sort of in the Venn diagram overlap with some of the goals of the Trump administration. But at their core, these are still this is a think tank that it thinks of conservatism through the definition of Ronald Reagan. Strong, international foreign policy, interventionist when necessary, but sort of a little bit of a moral code to our foreign policy. There is no more moral code to our foreign policy anymore during Trump. And then, of course, what he's doing with tariffs and the economy, that is not sort of that. And so the Heritage Foundation used to be sort of in that sort of shared in some ways. Heritage and AEI simply fought over individuals to work at their institutions because philosophically they were mostly on the same page. But Heritage decided to sell out financially. And now they came out with and said that somehow federal funds would be taken away from Indiana. Any projects that Indiana thought they were going to get would be taken away. It is just antithetical to what conservatism has been for the last 50 years. Again, apparently not caring about federalism, not caring about states' rights, So, and I actually think that you're going to see a lot of Republicans push back on this executive order that Donald Trump signed last night, trying to prevent states from doing their own regulation on artificial intelligence. That is going to be it's going to be some interesting. I don't think what he signed is constitutional. I don't think he can do that. It appears that only Congress can overwrite state laws, that they would have to do it. He didn't have the votes in Congress to include this. This was yet another sign, right? They tried to bully that moratorium on state regulations into the last couple of bills, either try to put it to the must-pass defense bill or try to get it into opening the government bill. And they couldn't get it there because there were so many Republicans that were against this. And guess who else is against this? The public. The public is very skeptical right now of AI, very nervous about AI. And so this is politically, I actually think, really damaging to Republicans in 2026, right? Donald Trump doesn't want to prevent, you can just see the ads now, right? Donald Trump doesn't want to prevent these tech companies from abusing our kids' mental health. Donald Trump doesn't want to prevent these tech companies from abusing your pocketbook by doing surveillance pricing and all this stuff. That is going to be, they're going to see a lot of Republicans, probably starting with Ron DeSantis, who has been among the most vocal conservative Republicans in the states against this federal moratorium against AI regulation. So Donald Trump's inviting another fight. And he's going to be inviting yet more proof that perhaps the emperor's, and I'm not going to sit here and say the emperor has no clothes, but we're starting to see a striptease here. And it feels like now this is the third straight month where there's been something where parts of his coalition have begun to fray, right? First, it was over Epstein, right? You've seen it that. Now you've seen it over healthcare and the state of the economy. We've seen it on tariffs, which also are linked to the state of the economy. And and now we've got it on artificial intelligence and sort of getting into bed with big tech, who is just as unpopular on the conservative right as they are on the progressive left. Like I said, Thursday, December 11th, I think is going to be seen as one of the more significant days when we start to plot when is this the beginning of the end? Right? Was it Election Day 2025? Was it the break on the Epstein files with the discharge petition? Was it, but what we're seeing is a consistent, is it the Indiana Republicans saying no on redistricting? The bottom line is there's fewer Republicans who are afraid of Donald Trump. There are more base conservatives who don't like this economy, who aren't going to punish local lawmakers who decide to defy Donald Trump if it is grounded in something the public themselves is concerned about. So, look, a lot of people have lost money trying to predict the end of the Trump era. But as I've said before, we're in year 10. It is no political movement lasts that long, and we're starting to see Trump's grip loosening all the time. Pick your metaphor. Emperor doesn't have no clothes, but he's looking, he's never looked more naked than he looks now on December 12th, 2025. Now, when he's in these moments, he's going to want to prove he still has strength. He's going to want to prove he still has influence. He's going to want to prove he can still sort of bend people towards his will. So I wouldn't be surprised, nobody's going to let go of power easily. So he's being challenged a lot. Probably should be prepared for a lot of rants, a lot of public threats. But the bottom line is a lot more of those folks on the receiving end are viewing those threats as empty. And they're now realizing Donald Trump's never going to be on a ballot again. And Donald Trump's influence gets weaker and weaker every day he's in office. So as the old saying goes, if it walks like a lame duck, if it quacks like a lame duck, I think it's likely we have a lame duck. I'll see you on Monday. Do you hate hangovers? Well, say goodbye to hangovers. Out of Office gives you the social buzz without the next day regret. Their best-selling Out of Office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz, boost your mood, and enhance creativity and relaxation. With 5 different strengths, you can tailor the dose to fit your vibe. From a gentle 1.5 milligram micro dose to their newest 15 milligram gummy for a more elevated experience. Their THC beverages and gummies are a modern, mindful alternative to a glass of wine or a cocktail. And I'll tell you this, I've given up booze. I don't like the hangovers. I prefer the gummy experience. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products, all designed to boost your mood and simply help you unwind. And if you struggle to switch off at night, Soul has a variety of products specifically designed to help you get a better night's rest, including their top-selling Sleepy Gummies. It's a fan favorite for deep, restorative sleep. So bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. Right now, Soul is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. So go to getsoul.com, use the promo code ToddCast. Don't forget that code. That's getsoul.com, promo code ToddCast for 30% off.